What's up, everybody? Thanks for clicking this video. Thanks for tuning into my channel. My name is Simon Hill, Black American from Louisiana, coming to you live from Budapest, Hungary. Today is February 5th, 2026, about 9:15 p.m. where I'm at right now. And we are continuing our 18th book in our Book to React series. This is episode 6 of Revolutionary Suicide by Huey P. Newton, the founder of the Black Panther Party. So far, in our previous 5 episodes, we finished the first 2 parts of this book, which comprises about, I would say, 15 chapters or so? No, 13 chapters, because we're starting chapter 14 today. We're going to be reading half of part 3 of this book, so that means we will read the first 4 chapters of part 3, titled Freedom, Bobby Seale, the founding of the Black Panther Party, and chapter 17 titled Patrolling. And that's where we will wrap it up today. It's about, looks like about 15 or 16 odd pages or so. Hopefully we'll wrap it up in about an hour, hour and a half. Hopefully you've been enjoying this text that we are reading for Black History Month as we try to honor our ancestors and the revolutionaries that came before us who made it so that we are able to continue to fight and struggle and create a better world for people and for all oppressed people across the planet. Any comments, I will be reading them, whether they come from the main live stream with the text or whether it's coming from the live stream on the phone right here. Shout out to everybody who's going to come in. And without further ado, let's get into it. Starting part 3. We believe that Black people will not be free until we are able to determine our destiny. Moving on to chapter 14, and it goes like this. Locked in jail, within a jail, my mind is still free. What if a person was so oriented that the loss of no material thing could cause him mental disorganization? This is The Free Agent, said by George Jackson. Soledad Brother is the book. On to chapter 14, Freedom. Jail is an odd place to find freedom, but that was the place I first found mine. In the Alameda County Jail in Oakland in 1964, the jail is located on the 10th floor of the Alameda County Courthouse, the huge white building we call Moby Dick. When I was falsely convicted of the assault against Odell Lee, Judge Diden sent me there to await sentencing. Shortly after I arrived, I was made a trustee, which gave me an opportunity to move about freely. Conditions were not good. In fact, the place blew up a few weeks later when the inmates refused to go on eating starches and split pea soup at almost every meal and went on a food strike. I joined them. We were brought our split pea soup. We hurled it back through the bars all over the walls and refused to lock up in our cells. So, once again, being locked up in jail doesn't mean that you can't fight back or resist the system. If you remember when we read the book of Yahya Sinwar, the leader of Hamas, before he was assassinated by the Zionists in Gaza while he was fighting for his freedom and his people's freedom, we read Yahya Sinwar's book, and in his book he spoke about how the people in jail held by the enemy used hunger strikes as a tool to cause for change and better conditions in the jail. So it's very interesting, the overlapping of the leader of Hamas's book and Huey P. Newton's own autobiography. Go into the comment section. Go into the comments. We have Trusted Saber up in the chat. Shout out to Trusted Saber. He says hi. Shout out to Aliyah Holmes. Shout out to Aliyah Holmes as well. Join in the comments. Shout out to Jamil Ahmad up in the comments as well. Hello to all of you. And hopefully you're enjoying our reading of this revolutionary text by one of our famous Black intellectuals, leaders, Huey P. Newton. Revolutionary Suicide. Continuing here. So I was the only trustee who took part in the strike. And because I could move between cell blocks, they charged me with organizing it. True, I had carried a few messages back and forth, but I was not an organizer then. Not that it mattered to the jail administration. Trustees were supposed to go along with the establishment in everything. Trustees were supposed to go along with the establishment and everything. And since I could not do that, I was slapped with the organizing label and put in the hole, what Black prisoners call the soul breaker. I was 22 years old. It's crazy he's only 22 at this point in his life, and he's lived, a whole grown-ass man's life, you know what I'm saying? Other than seeing Jesus and having a baby, this man done did damn near everything. Continuing here. I was 22 years old, and I had been in jail before on various beefs, mostly burglary and petty larceny. My parents were pretty sick of me in my late teens and the years following, so I had to depend on Sunnyman to come up from Los Angeles or wherever he was to bail me out. Since I had been given to him, he came whenever he could, but sometimes I could not find him. At any rate, I was no stranger to jail by 1964, although I had never been in extreme solitary confinement. Within jail, there are four levels of confinement: the main line, segregation, isolation, and solitary. The soul breaker. You can be in jail. You can be in jail, but the soul breaker is your last end of the world. In 1964, there were two of these deprivation cells at the Alameda County Courthouse. Each was 4.5 feet wide by 6 feet long by 10 feet high. The floor was dark red rubber tile and the walls were black. If the guards wanted to, they could turn on a light in the ceiling, but I always kept in the dark and nude. But I was always kept in the dark and nude. That is part of the deprivation, why the soul breaker is called a strip cell. Sometimes the prisoner in the other cell would get a blanket, but they never gave me one. He sometimes got toilet paper too. The limit was 2 squares, and when he begged for more, he was told no. That is part of the punishment. There was no bunk, no wash bin, no toilet, nothing but bare floors, bare walls, a solid steel door, and a round hole 4 inches in diameter and 6 inches deep in the middle of the floor. The prisoner was supposed to urinate and defecate in this hole. That's crazy. That's crazy. America is a wicked, evil, satanic nation, because I can't think of any nation that can call itself democratic, humane, one that values human life and expression and dignity, while they have deprivation chambers, while we have isolation punishment, while we have solitary confinement in damn near every prison in America. Whether that be federal or state, this can be found. And this is torture. This is wrong. This is why America is the great Satan. Anyway, gonna give a shout out to everybody up in the chat. Shout out to OG Kicks. Shout out to Parker Newton. We are reading Huey P. Newton's book, Revolutionary Suicide. Hopefully you're enjoying it. And shout out to everybody else up in the comments section as well. Leave a comment. Jump in the conversation. Shout out to Happy Name Pop as well up in the chat. Everybody. Now, let's continue with Huey P. Newton's book. So, a half-gallon milk carton filled with water was my liquid for the week. Twice a day and always at night, the guards brought a little cup of cold split pea soup right out of the can. Sometimes during the day, they brought fruit loaf, a patty of cooked vegetables mashed together into a little ball. When I first went in there, I wanted to eat and stay healthy. But soon I realized that there was another trick, because when I ate, I had to defecate. At night, no light came in under the door. I could not even find the hole if I had wanted to. If I was desperate, I had to search with my hand. Ooh, when I found it, the hole was always slimy with the filth that had gone in before. I was just like a mole looking for the sun. I hated finding it when I did. After a few days, the hole filled up and overflowed, so that I could not lie down without wallowing in my own waste. Torture, literally torture. Literally torture. Wow. Laying down in solitary confinement in his own human shit. That's wicked, wicked. What an evil, sick nation. Evil, disgusting nation this nation is. I hated finding it when I did. After a few days, the hole filled up and overflowed, so that I could not lie down without wallowing in my own waste. Once every week or two, the guards ran a hose into the cell and washed out the urine and defecation. This cleared the air for a while and made it all right to take a deep breath. I had been told I would break before the 15 days were up. Most men did. After 2 or 3 days, they would begin to scream and beg for someone to come and take them out. And the captain would pay a visit and say, "We don't want to treat you this way. Just come out now and abide by the rules and don't be so arrogant. We'll treat you fairly. The doors here are large." To tell the truth, after 2 or 3 days, I was in bad shape. Why I did not break, I do not know. Stubbornness, probably. I do not want to beg. Certainly my resistance was not connected to any kind of ideology or program. That came later. Anyway, I did not scream and beg. I learned the secrets of survival. One secret was the same that Mahatma Gandhi learned, to take little sips of nourishment, just enough to keep up one's strength, but never enough to have to defecate until the 15 days were up. That way I kept the air somewhat clean and did not have the overflow. I did the same with water, taking little sips every few hours. My body absorbed all of it, and I did not have to urinate. There was another more important secret, one that took longer to learn. During the day, a little light showed in the 2-inch crack at the bottom of the steel door. At night, as the sun went down and the lights clicked off one by one, I heard all the cells closing. I heard all the cells closing. Clicked off. I heard all the cells closing and all the locks. One more time. At night, as the sun went down and the lights clicked off one by one, I heard all the cells closing and all the locks. I held my hands up in front of my face, and soon I could not see them. For me, that was the testing time, the time when I had to save myself or break. Outside jail, the brain is always being bombarded by external stimuli. These ordinary sights and sounds of life help keep our mental processes in order, rational. In deprivation, you have to somehow replace the stimuli, provide an interior environment for yourself. Ever since I was a little boy, I've been able to overcome stress by calling up pleasant thoughts. So very soon, I began to reflect on the most soothing parts of my past, not to keep out any evil thoughts, but to reinforce myself in some kind of rewarding experience. Here, I learned something that was different. When I had a pleasant memory, what was I to do with it? Should I throw it out and get another, or try to keep it to entertain myself as long as possible? If you are not disciplined, a strange thing happens. The pleasant thought comes, and then another and another, like quick cuts flashing vividly across a movie screen. At first they are organized, then they start to pick up speed, pushing in on top of one another, going faster, 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 and faster. The pleasant thoughts are not so pleasant now. They are horrible and grotesque caricatures, whirling around in your head. Stop. I heard myself say, stop, stop, stop. I did not scream. I was able to stop them. Now what do? I started to exercise, especially when I heard the jangle of keys as the guards came with the split pea soup and fruit loaf. I would not scream. I would not apologize, even though they came every day saying they would let me out if I gave in. When they were coming, I would get up and start my calisthenics. And when they went away, I would start the pleasant thoughts again. If I were too tired to stand, I would lie down and find myself on my back. Later, I learned that my position, with my back arched and only my shoulders and tight buttocks touching the floor, was a Zen Buddhist posture. Interesting. Okay, so he's giving out game on how to survive when you're captured by the enemy. When you're behind enemy lines, basically sit in that Zen Buddhist pose, don't drink, and pray. Pray to somebody that you don't have to take a shit. Okay, anyway, I did not know it then, of course. I just found myself on my back. When the thoughts started coming again to entertain me, and when the same thing happened with the speed up faster, faster, I would say stop and start again. Over a span of time, I do not know how long it took, I mastered my thoughts. I could start them and stop them. I could slow them down and speed them up. It was a very conscious exercise. For a while, I feared I would lose control. I could not think. I could not stop thinking. Only later did I learn through practice to go at the speed I wanted. I call them film clips, but they are really thought patterns, the most vivid pictures of my family, girls, good times. Soon I could lie with my back arched for hours on end, and I placed no importance on the passage of time. Control, I learned to control my food, my body, and my mind through a deliberate act of will. That's transformative. After 15 days, the guards pulled me out and sent me back to a regular cell for 24 hours, where I took a shower and saw a medical doctor and a psychiatrist. They were worried that prisoners would become mentally disorganized in such deprivation. Then, because I had not repented, they sent me back to the hole. By then, it held no fears for me. I had won my freedom. So, shout out to Akshu Vlogs for joining. Shout out to everybody. I'm going to put this in the comments. I'd be very interested to know what y'all think about solitary confinement and Is solitary confinement and sleep deprivation a type of torture? All right. All right. So, Huey P just spoke about. Oh, sorry. How do I make this a poll, man? Oh, I can't make it a poll here. Sorry. I was going to make it a poll, but I guess y'all have to catch that. Oh, here it is. I can't make it a poll. All right. Huey P just spoke about his time in solitary confinement. Should solitary be banned as torture? All right, and yeah, let's just put it as yes or no. Let's just leave it as yes or no. All right. And then, yeah, we're going to go back here to the other live stream, just setting it up. Just chilling, man. Hold up. And back. Okay, now we're back. Okay. So he said he mastered being able to be alone for 15 days without any sort of deprivation. You know what I mean? So we're going to just leave it at that. Hold on. Let's go back here. Hold on. I need to make sure I can see the people. I need to see the people when they leave their comments. Anyway, I'm going to continue here. All right. Continue here. So most people who know me do not realize, sorry, I skipped a paragraph. Anyway, soul breakers exist because the authorities know that such conditions would drive them to the breaking point. But when I resolved that they would not conquer my will, I became stronger than they were. I understood them better than they understood me. No longer dependent on the things of the world, I felt really free for the first time in my life. In the past, I had been like my jailers. I had pursued the goals of capitalistic America. Now I had a higher freedom. Most people who know me do not realize that I have been in and out of jail for the past 12 years. They know only of me. They know only of my 11 months in solitary in 1967, waiting for the murder trial to begin, and the 22 months at the penal colony after that. But 1967 would not have been possible without 1964. I could not have handled the penal colony solitary without the soul breaker behind me. Therefore, I cannot tell inexperienced young comrades to go into jail and into solitary, that this is the way to defy the authorities and exercise their freedom. I know what solitary can do to a man. The strip cell has been outlawed throughout the United States. Prisoners I talked to in California tell me it is no longer in use on the West Coast. That was the work of Charles Gary, the lawyer who defended me in 1968, when he fought the case of Warren Wells, a Black Panther accused of shooting a policeman. The Superior Court of California said it was an outrage to human decency to put any man through such extreme deprivation. Of course, prisons have their ways, and out there right now, somewhere, prisoners without lawyers are probably lying in their own filth in the soul breaker. Definitely in the South, definitely in Louisiana. That's for sure. That's for sure. Continuing here. So, I was in the hole for a month. My sentence, when it came, was for 6 months on the county farm at Santa Rita, about 50 miles south of Oakland. There is an honor camp with no walls, and the inmates are not locked up. There is a barbed wire fence, but anyone can easily walk off during the daytime. The inmates work at tending livestock, harvesting crops, and doing other farm work. I was not in the honor camp long. A few days after I arrived, I had a fight with a fat black inmate named Bojack, who served in the mess hall. Bojack was a diligent enforcer of small helpings, and I was a dipper. Whenever Bojack turned away, I would dip for more with my spoon. One day he tried to prevent me from dipping, and I called him for protecting the oppressor's interests and smashed him with a steel tray. When they pulled me off him, I was hustled next door to Greystone, the maximum security prison at Santa Rita. Here, prisoners are locked up all day inside a stone building. Not only that, I was put in solitary confinement for the remaining months of my sentence. Because of my experience in the hold, I could survive. Still, I did not submit willingly. The food was as bad in Greystone as it had been in Alameda, and I constantly protested about that and the lack of heat in my cell. Half the time, we had no heat at all. Wherever you go in prison, there are disturbed inmates. One on my block at Santa Rita screamed night and day as loudly as he could. His vocal cords seemed made of iron. From time to time, the guards came into his cell and threw buckets of cold water on him. Gradually, as the inmate wore down, the screams became a croak, and then a squeak, and then a whisper. Long after he gave out, the sound lingered in my head. Disturbing, very disturbing. The Santa Rita administration finally got disgusted with my continual complaints and protests and shipped me back to the jail in Oakland, where I spent the rest of my time in solitary. By then, I was used to the cold. Even now, I do not like any heat at all wherever I stay, no matter what the outside temperature. Even so, the way I was treated told me a lot about those who devise such punishment. I know them well. That's the end of chapter 14. Very interesting chapter, harrowing chapter. I like the way he's handling the narrative and the story in this, different than the Angela Davis and the Assata Shakur autobiographies. This one is very linear and easy to read, and Assata and Angela Davis wrote their stories in a non-linear fashion, but also focused a lot on their jail time. You know what I'm saying? And that was just one jail chapter from Huey P. Maybe he's going to talk more about his time in jail. Of course, he probably will, but I don't know. I'm not that fascinated by jail stories. The way he did his was cool. It was short, brief, to the point, done. Okay, now moving on. Chapter 15. Seal is the heir to the early organizing efforts of young blacks and whites in the rural South. He inherits the demands of the early 60s students that fundamental constitutional guarantees and promises, so long violated by illegitimate white power, be immediately honored while reserving the right to attack the system itself. Said by Julian Bond, a time to speak, a time to act. Bobby Seale. Out of jail and back on the street in 1965, I again took up with Bobby Seale. We had a lot to talk about. I had not seen him in more than a year. Bobby and I had not always agreed. In fact, we disagreed the first time we met, during the Cuban Missile Crisis several years before. That was the time President Kennedy was about to blow humanity off the face of the earth because Russian ships were on their way to liberated territory with arms for the Cuban people. The Progressive Labor Party was holding a there's a typo here. It says really, but it's rally. Okay. The Progressive Labor Party was holding a rally outside Oakland City College to encourage support for Fidel Castro, and I was there because I agreed with their views. There were a number of speakers, and one of them, Donald Worden, launched into a lengthy praise of Fidel. He did this in his usual opportunistic way. Tooting his own horn, Worden was about halfway through his routine, criticizing civil rights organizations and asking why we put our money into that kind of thing, when Bobby challenged him, expressing opposition to Worden and strong support for the position of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. He felt that the NAACP was the hope of black people, and because of this, he supported the government and its moves against Cuba. Oh no, oh no. I explained to him afterward that he was wrong to support the government and the civil rights organizations. Too much money had already been put into legal actions. There were enough laws on the books to permit black people to deal with all their problems, but the laws were not enforced. It's always interesting, like how our heroes, especially our duo heroes, always meet and have conflict when they first meet. Like Andre 3000, when he first met Big Boy, I think they had a rap battle. It was like a vicious rap battle, you know what I'm saying? DMX, when he first met Jay-Z, had a vicious rap battle. And here we go, Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale, and it sounds like Bobby Seale is sort of like on some liberal Tommen-ish, talking about the NAACP is actually kind of good, if I remember right. Okay, yeah. Bobby was saying, like, no, the NAACP is actually good, and the Cuban government is actually bad. So, like, what the hell? Like, he was trying to play Huey. Huey was trying to play Bobby low-key with that. I'm going to continue here. Therefore, trying to get more laws was only a meaningless diversion from the real issues. This was an argument I had heard in the Afro-American Association and in Oakland by Malcolm X, who made the point over and over again. Bobby began to think about this and later came over to my point of view. Whatever our earlier disagreements were, Bobby and I were close by 1965. Later, I recruited him into the Afro-American Association, but when I left it, he continued to stick with Warden. At that time, I was still going through my identity crisis, looking for some understanding of myself in relation to society. While I took a back seat in the association and refused to make a stand on any position, Bobby threw all his energy into it, even after I left. Still, we did not establish close contact until I got out of the hole in 1965. At that point, Bobby was planning to get married, and he needed a bed for his new apartment. I was breaking up with my girlfriend and had a bed I no longer wanted. I sold it to him and we hauled it to his home. That afternoon, we began to talk. He told me that he had also left the Afro-American Association to hook up with Ken Freeman and his group, the Revolutionary Action Movement, or RAM. Most of the brothers in this group attended Oakland City College, but the organization was a sort of underground, off-campus operation. They also had a front group called Soul Students Advisory Council, which was a recognized campus organization. The RAM group was more intellectual than active. They did a lot of talking about the revolution and also some writing. Writing was almost a requirement for membership. In fact, but Bobby was no writer. At the time I got out of jail, Bobby had been involved in an argument with the members and had been suspended for a time. Still angry about this, he told me he intended to break with them. Like me, like thousands of us, Bobby was looking for something and not finding it. Okay, similar souls cross paths. Bobby and I entered into a period of intense exploration, trying to solve some of the ideological problems of the Black movement. Partly, we needed to explain to our own satisfaction why no Black political organization had succeeded. The only one we thought had promised long-term success was the Organization of Afro-American Unity, started by Malcolm X. But Malcolm had died too soon to pull his program together. Malcolm's slogan had been, "Freedom by any means necessary," but nothing we saw was taking us there. We still had only a vague conception of what freedom ought to mean to Black people, except in abstract terms borrowed from politicians. And that did not help the people on the block at all. Those lofty words were meant for intellectuals and the bourgeoisie, who were already fairly comfortable. Much of our conversation revolved around groups in the San Francisco, Oakland, and Berkeley areas. Knowing the people who belonged to them, we could evaluate both positive and negative aspects of their of their characters. Knowing the people who belong to them, we could evaluate both positive and negative aspects of their characters and the nature of their organizations. While we respected many of the moves these brothers had made, we felt that the negative aspects of their movements overshadowed the positive ones. Sounds a little bit like FBA. Sounds a little bit like the FBA movement, non-movement. Anyway, we started throwing around ideas. None of the groups were able to recruit and involve the very people they professed to represent. The poor people in the community who never went to college probably were not even able to finish high school. Yet these were our people. They were the vast majority of the Black population in the area. Any group talking about Blacks was in fact talking about those low on the ladder in terms of well-being, self-respect, and the amount of concern the government had for them. All of us were talking and nobody was reaching them. Bobby had a talent that could help us. He was beginning to make a name for himself in local productions as an actor and comedian. I had seen him act in several plays written by brothers, and he was terrific. I had never liked comedians, and I would not go out of my way to hear one. If a person presents his material in a serious way and uses humor to get his points across, he will have me laughing with all the rest. But stand-up, wisecracking comedians leave me cold. Still, I recognized Bobby's talent, and I thought he could use it to relate to people and persuade them in an incisive way. Often, when we were rapping about our frustrations with particular people or groups, Bobby would act out their madness. He would do expert impersonations or imitations of President Kennedy, Martin Luther King, James Cagney, Humphrey Bogart, and Chester of Gunsmoke. He could also imitate down to the last detail some of the brothers around us. I would crack my sides laughing, not only because his imitations were so good, but because he could convey certain attitudes and characteristics so sharply. He caught all their shortcomings, the way their ideas failed to meet the needs of the people. I mean, Bobby sounds like the ultimate homie. You know what I mean? I love impressions too. Bobby would have had me cracking up too. You know what I mean? And I'm picturing, man, like the Huey P. Newton like biopic should be a bit of comedy. It should be like Friday. You know what I mean? Like Smokey and Craig, they out on the porch smoking, rapping, talking to each other, man. And that should be the same. Huey and Bobby are just like rapping. You know what I'm saying? So that would be dope. Friday, the Black Panther version. You know what I'm saying? Huey and Bobby on the stoop. Continuing here. We plan to work through the Soul Students Advisory Council. Although SSAC was just a front for RAM, it had one large advantage. It was not an intellectual organization, and for that reason, it would appeal to many lower-class brothers at City College. If these brothers belonged to a group that gave them feelings of strength and respect, they could become effective participants. It was important to give them something relevant to do, something not degrading. Soul Students was normally an ineffective and transitory group without a real program. Only if something big was happening did their meetings attract a lot of people. In the quiet times, only 2 or 3 would show up. Just then, however, Soul Students had a hot issue: the establishment of a program of Afro-American history and culture in the college's regular curriculum. Although it was a relevant program, the authorities were resisting it tooth and nail. Every time we proposed a new course, they countered with reasons why it could not be. At the same time, ironically, they encouraged us to be concerned. This was simple trickery. They were dragging their feet. Bobby and I saw this as an opportunity to move Soul Students a step further by adopting a program of armed self-defense. We approached them proposing a rally in front of the college in support of the Afro-American History program. We pointed out that this would be a different kind of rally. The Soul Students members would strap on guns and march on the sidewalk in front of the school. Okay, so the legendary, protest style that the Panthers were known for, the provocative style, was first utilized to try to just get Black history classes taught at Oakland City College. Some history for you right there. In Black History Month, the first time you saw brothers strap up with guns, or at least the suggestion in Huey's mind to do this strategy, was to protest for Black history in schools. Think about that. That's absolutely insane. All right. So anyway, the Soul Students would strap on guns and march on the sidewalk in front of the school. Partly, the rally would express our opposition to police brutality, but it would also intimidate the authorities at City College who were resisting our program. We were looking for a way to emphasize both college and community, to draw them in together. The police and the school authorities needed a strong jolt from Blacks, and we knew this kind of action would make them realize that the brothers meant business. Carrying guns for self-defense was perfectly legal at the time. We explained all of this to Soul Students and showed them what we did not intend to, we explained all this to Soul Students and showed them that we did not intend to break any laws, but we're concerned that the organization start dealing with reality rather than sit around intellectualizing and writing essays about the white man. We wanted them to dedicate themselves to armed self-defense with the full understanding that this was defense for the survival of Black people in general, and in particular for the cultural program we were trying to establish. As we saw it, Blacks were getting ripped off everywhere. The police had given us no choice but to defend ourselves against their brutality. On the campus, we were being miseducated. We had no courses dealing with our real needs and problems, courses that taught us how to survive. Our program was designed to lead the brothers into self-defense before we were completely wiped out physically and mentally. The weapons were a recruiting device. I felt we could recruit Oakland City College students from the grassroots, people who did not relate to campus organizations, that were all too intellectual and offered no effective program of action. Street people would relate to soul students if they followed our plan. If the black community has learned to respect anything, it has learned to respect the gun. Dark and definitely true. Definitely true. We underestimated the difficulty of bringing the brothers around. Soul students completely rejected our program. Those brothers have been so intimidated by police firepower, they would not give any serious consideration to strapping on a gun, legal or not. After that setback, we went to the Revolutionary Action Movement. They did not have many members, just a few guys from the college campus who talked a lot. We explained that by wearing and displaying weapons, the Street Brothers would relate to Ram's example of leadership. We also talked about a new idea, patrolling the police. Since the police were the main perpetrators of violence against the community, we went no further than those two tactics, armed self-defense and police patrol. A more complete program was sure to get bogged down on minor points. I just wanted them to adopt a program of self-defense, and after that was worked out, we would then develop it more fully. We were not aiming then at party organization. There were too many organizations already. Our job was to make one of them relevant. That would be contribution enough. However, we were having a lot of trouble breaking through. Ram rejected the plan, too. They thought it was suicidal, that we could not survive a single day patrolling the police. This left us where we had been all along, nowhere. So it seems like Huey is trying to convince people about the propaganda of the deed. You know what I mean? And, proselytizing, if that's the right word to use, to the lumpens, as he said earlier. You know what I mean? The lumpen proletariat. And what do lower class people, I would say, in America love? Guns. They like provocative actions. They like people that, show they take no shit. You know what I'm saying? And that's what Huey was trying to say. Like, he went to RAM, he went to the Soul Students Advisory Council, and they all were too pussy about it. And so this is how we get to chapter 16, which is titled The Founding of the Black Panther Party. Quick water break right here. All right. Let's continue here. Chapter 16. As a sapling bent low stores energy for a violent backswing, blacks bent double by oppression have stored energy which will be released in the form of rage. Black rage, apocalyptic and final. William Greer and Price Cobb's Black Rage. The founding of the Black Panther Party, Chapter 16. All during this time, Bobby and I had no thought of the Black Panther Party, no plan to head up any organization, and the 10-point program was still in the future. We had seen Watts rise up the previous year. We had seen how the police attacked the Watts community after causing the trouble in the first place. We had seen Martin Luther King come to Watts in an effort to calm the people, and we had seen his philosophy of nonviolence rejected. Black people had been taught nonviolence. It was deep in us. What good, however, was nonviolence when the police were determined to rule by force? We had seen the Oakland Police and the California Highway Patrol begin to carry their shotguns in full view as another way of striking fear into the community. We had seen all this, and we recognized that the rising consciousness of Black people was almost at the point of explosion. One must relate to the history of one's community and to its future. Everything we had seen convinced us that our time had come. Prophetic. Out of this need sprang the Black Panther Party. Bobby and I finally had no choice but to form an organization that would involve the lower class brothers. We worked it out in conversations and discussions. Most of the talk was casual. Bobby lived near the campus, and his living room became a kind of headquarters. Although we were still involved with Soul students, we attended few meetings, and when we did go, our presence was mostly disruptive. We raised questions that upset people. Our conversations with each other became the important thing. Brothers who had a free hour between classes and others who just hung up Sorry, brothers who had a free hour between classes and others who just hung around the campus drifted in and out of Bobby's house. We drank beer and wine and chewed over the political situation, our social problems, and the merits and shortcomings of the other groups. We also discussed the black achievements of the past, particularly as they helped us to understand current events. In a sense, these sessions at Bobby's house were our political education classes, and the party sort of grew out of them. Even after even after we formally organized, we continued the discussions in our office. By then, we had moved on to include not only problems, but possible solutions. We also read the literature of oppressed people and their struggles for liberation in other countries is very large, and we pored over these books to see how their experiences might help us to understand our plight. Okay, hold on. All right, yeah, continuing here. All right, yeah. Da, 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 da. So we also read the literature of oppressed people and their struggles for liberation in other countries is very large. And we pored over these books to see how their experiences might help us to understand our plight. We read the works of Frantz Fanon, particularly The Wretched of the Earth, the 4 volumes of Chairman Mao Zedong, and Che Guevara's Guerrilla Warfare. Che and Mao were veterans of people's wars, and they had worked out successful strategies for liberating their people. We read these men's works because we saw them as kinsmen. The oppressor who had controlled them was controlling us, both directly and indirectly. We believed it was necessary to know how they gained their freedom in order to go about getting ours. However, we did not want merely to import ideas and strategies. We had to transform what we learned into principles and methods acceptable to the brothers on the block. Mao and Fanon and Guevara all saw clearly that the people had been stripped of their birthright and their dignity, not by any philosophy or mere words, but at gunpoint. They had suffered a holdup by gangsters and rape. For them, the only way to win freedom was to meet force with force. At bottom, this is a form of self-defense. Although that defense might at times take on characteristics of aggression, in the final analysis, the people do not initiate. They simply respond to what has been inflicted upon them. People respect the expression of strength and dignity displayed by men who refuse to bow to the weapons of oppression. Though it may mean death, these men will fight because death with dignity is preferable to ignominy. Then too, there is always the chance that the oppressor will be overwhelmed. Let's read that sentence again because that's so vital, so inspirational, so moving. So, people respect the expression of strength and dignity displayed by men who refuse to bow to the weapons of oppression. Though it may mean death, these men will fight because death with dignity is preferable to ignominy, meaning being anonymous or unknown or a coward. I would also extend it. So there is always a chance that the oppressor will be overwhelmed. Fanon made a statement during the Algerian War that impressed me. He said it was the year of the boomerang, which is the third phase of violence. At that point, the violence of the aggressor turns on him and strikes a killing blow. Yet the oppressor does not understand the process. He knows no more than he did in the first phase when he launched the violence. The oppressed are always defensive. The oppressor is always aggressive and surprised when the people turn back on him the force he has used against them. Negroes with Guns by Robert Williams had a great influence on the kind of party we developed. Williams had been active in Monroe, North Carolina. Okay. Not Monroe, Louisiana. I know we were hoping for it, but c'est la vie. Anyway, so Williams had been active in Monroe, North Carolina with a program of armed self-defense that had enlisted many in the community. However, I did not like the way he had called on the federal government for assistance. We viewed the government as an enemy, the agency of a ruling clique that controls the country. We also had some literature about the Deacons for Defense and Justice in Louisiana, the state where I was born. One of their leaders had come through the Bay Area on a speaking and fundraising tour, and we liked what he said. The Deacons had done a good job of defending civil rights marchers in their area, but they also had a habit of calling upon the federal government to carry out this defense, or at least to assist them in defending the people who were upholding the law. The Deacons even went so far as to enlist local sheriffs and police to defend the marchers, with the threat that if law enforcement agencies would not defend them, the Deacons would. We also viewed the local police, the National Guard, and the regular military as one huge armed group that opposed the will of the people. In a boundary situation, people have no real defense except what they provide for themselves. Basically, what he's saying right here, Huey is giving a shout out to all the other armed self-defense groups that are less famous, like compared to the Black Panthers, like the Deacons for Defense in Louisiana, or Robert Williams, his group of armed black men with guns who are patrolling the communities in North Carolina. Basically, he's just giving a shout out to, like, yo, give a shout out to the ancestors that came before me, the same way we're honoring the ancestor Huey P right now. Let's continue here. So we read also the works of the freedom fighters who had done so much for black communities in the United States. Bobby had collected all of Malcolm X's speeches and ideas from papers like The Militant and Muhammad Speaks. These we studied carefully. Although Malcolm's program for the Organization of Afro-American Unity was never put into operation, he has made it clear that blacks ought to arm. Malcolm's influence was ever present. We continue to believe that the Black Panther Party exists in the spirit of Malcolm. Often it is difficult to say exactly how an action or a program has been determined or influenced in a spiritual way. Such intangibles are hard to describe, although they can be more significant than any precise influence. Therefore, the words on this page cannot convey the effects that Malcolm has had on the Black Panther Party. Although, as far as I am concerned, the party is a living testament to his life work. I do not claim that the party has done what Malcolm would have done. Many others say that their programs are Malcolm's programs. We do not say this, but Malcolm's spirit is in us, says Huey P. Newton. I always thought before reading that paragraph that people just sort of like copy and pasted, Malcolm onto Huey. Of course, Huey would have been influenced by Malcolm, but I didn't know that he had it in writing. Like, basically the Panthers exist as the brainchild of Malcolm and the Deacons of Defense and Robert Williams and all the people that came before. So while we might be getting the praise, as in Huey P. and Bobby might be getting all the praise for starting the Black Panthers, Huey P. was saying right here and now in his own book on the chapter where he talks about creating the Black Panthers that literally it was just him and Bobby in their rundown trap apartment talking and reading all types of books while drinking wine and drinking beer and having posters of Malcolm on the wall. That was it. That's how the Black Panther Party started. You know what I'm saying? And that's they say the Apple computer. You know what I mean? They say the Mac was invented in a garage. That is less impressive than the Black Panther Party being invented here. I'm just saying. Continuing here. From all these things, the books, Malcolm's writings, and spirit, our analysis of the local situation, the idea of an organization was forming. One day, quite suddenly, almost by chance, we found a name. I had read a pamphlet about voter registration in Mississippi, how the people in Lowndes County had armed themselves against establishment violence. Their political group, called the Lowndes County Freedom Organization, had a Black Panther for its symbol. A few days later, while Bobby and I were rapping, I suggested that we use the panther as our symbol and call our political vehicle the Black Panther Party. The panther is a fierce animal, but he will not attack until he is backed into a corner. Then he will strike out. The image seemed appropriate, and Bobby agreed without discussion. At this point, we knew it was time to stop talking and begin organizing. Although we had always wanted to get away from the intellectualizing and theoretic characteristic of other groups, at times we were as inactive as they were. The time had come for action. Inspirational. There's a great little video I saw earlier today. It's like the 7 levels of being a communist. The first is like basically starting off like as a shit lib, social dem. And then eventually you move on to, bro, I need to just move out into the woods. You know what I'm saying? Like when you're reaching level 6 and 7. I don't want to spoil it, you know what I'm saying? But it sounds like Huey was going through the same thing, the 7 levels of being a revolutionary. You know what I'm saying? And he was going up in rank and rank. And now it's time to take the theory and put it into praxis. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, this is the last chapter we're going to read. We're going to read chapter 17. We're going to blow right through it. Hopefully you're enjoying this if you're watching this on the playback, and hopefully you're learning a lot of the history of the Black Panther Party, right? Let's continue here. So, chapter 17. The only way to police a ghetto is to be oppressive. None of the police commissioner's men, even with the best will in the world, have any way of understanding the lives led by the people they swagger about in twos and threes controlling. Their very presence is an insult, and it would be even if they spent their entire day feeding gumdrops to children. They represent the force of the white world, and that world's real intentions are simply for that world's criminal profit and ease, to keep the black man corralled up here in his place. James Baldwin. James Baldwin was a fool with it. He was a fool with it, wasn't he? My God, it was just beasting on this page. My God, just radical. Just the fire that comes out of every single word from James Baldwin on a page is fire. Anyway, continuing here. That was James Baldwin from 5th Avenue, Uptown. Nobody knows my name. Chapter 17, patrolling. It was the spring of 1966. Still without a definite program, we were at the stage of testing ideas that would capture the imagination of the community. Eric says hi. Shout out to Eric and everybody else up in the chat. All right. Going on, continuing here. So we began, as always, by checking around with the Street Brothers. We asked them if they would be interested in forming the Black Panther Party for self-defense, which would be based upon defending the community against the aggression of the power structure, including the military and the armed might of the police. We informed the brothers of their right to possess weapons. Most of them were interested. Then we talked about how the people are constantly intimidated by arrogant, belligerent police officers and exactly what we could do about it. We went to pool halls and bars, all the places where brothers congregate and talk. I was prepared to give them legal advice. From my law courses at Oakland City College and San Francisco Law School, I was familiar with the California Penal Code and well-versed in the laws relating to weapons. I also had something very important at my disposal, the Law Library of the North Oakland Service Center, a community center poverty program where Bobby was working. The center gave legal advice, and there were many law books on the shelves. Unfortunately, most of them dealt with civil law, since the anti-poverty program was not supposed to advise poor people about criminal law. However, I made good use of the books they had to run down the full legal situation to brothers on the street. We were doing what the poverty program claimed to be doing, but never had, giving help and counsel to poor people about the things that crucially affected their lives. All that summer, we circulated in the black communities of Richmond, Berkeley, Oakland, and San Francisco. Wherever brothers gathered, we talked with them about their right to arm. In general, they were interested but skeptical about the weapons idea. They could not see anyone walking around with a gun in full view. To recruit any sizable number of street brothers, we would obviously have to do more than talk. We needed to give practical applications of our theory, show them that we were not afraid of weapons and not afraid of death. The way we finally won the brothers over was by patrolling the police with arms. Before we began the patrols, however, Bobby and I sat down in writing a practical course of action. We could go no further without a program, and we resolved to drop everything else, even though it might take a while to come up with something viable. One day we went to the North Oakland Service Center to work it out. The center was an ideal place because of the books and the fact that we could work undisturbed. First, we pulled together all the books we had been reading and dozens we had only heard about. We discussed Mao's program, Cuba's program, and all the others, but concluded that we could not follow any of them. Our unique situation required a unique program. Although the relationship between the oppressor and the oppressed is universal, forms of oppression vary. The ideas that mobilized the people of Cuba and China sprang from their own history and political structures. The practical parts of those programs could be carried out only under a certain kind of oppression. Our program had to deal with America. I started rapping off the essential points for the survival of black and oppressed people in the United States. Bobby wrote them down, and then we separated those ideas into two sections, what we want and what we believe. We split them up because the ideas fell naturally into two distinct categories. It was necessary to explain why we wanted certain things. At the same time, our goals were based on beliefs, and we set those out too. In the section on beliefs, we made it clear that all the objective conditions necessary for attaining our goals were already in existence, but that a number of societal factors stood in our way. This was to help the people understand what was working against them. All in all, our 10-point program took about 20 minutes to write. Thinking it would take days, we were prepared for a long session, but we never got to the small mountain of books piled up around us. We had come to an important realization. Books could only point in general direction. The rest was also up to us. The rest was up to us. This is the program we wrote down. October 1966, Black Panther Party, platform and program. What we want, what we believe. Number 1, we want freedom. Prophecies of ancient wisdom, cataclysm, niggas saying fuck the system. Oh my God. Imagine having no running water to drink. Chemicals contaminate the pipes leading to your sink. Just think, if they lock the doors and said it's martial law, are you ready to die for your family or what you feeling for? Could you take the life of somebody you know or have feelings for if necessary? I got cousins in the military, but as far as I'm concerned, they die when they register. We need Hueys. I'm sorry, I got caught up in the dead prayers. I just saw that one line, we want freedom. And I need to wake up. So it's not that the book is boring. I've just been working all day, bro. Anyway, I'm sorry. We want freedom. We want power to determine the destiny of our black community. Number 1, we believe that black people will not be free until we are able to determine our destiny. We want full employment for our people. We believe that the federal government is responsible and obligated to give every man employment or a guaranteed income. We believe that if the white American businessmen will not give full employment, then the means of production should be taken from the businessmen and placed in the community so that the people of the community can organize and employ all of its people and give a high standard of living. Radical, I love it. Oh, I'm getting shivers, man. I'm getting goosebumps. We want an end to the robbery by the capitalists of our black community. We believe that this racist government has robbed us, and now we are demanding the overdue debt of 40 acres and 2 mules. 40 acres and 2 mules were promised 100 years ago as restitution for slave labor and mass murder of black people. We will accept the payment in currency, which will be distributed to our communities, to our many communities. The Germans are now aiding the Jews in Israel for the genocide of the Jewish people. The Germans murdered 6 million Jews. The American racist has taken part in the slaughter of over 50 million black people. Therefore, we feel that this is a modest demand that we make. We want decent housing, fit for shelter of human beings. We believe that if the white landlords will not give decent housing to our black community, then the housing and the land should be made into cooperatives so that our community, with government aid, can build and make decent housing for its people. We want education for our people that exposes the true nature of this decadent American society. That's such a bar. Let's read that again. We want education for our people that exposes the true nature of this decadent American society. We want education that teaches us our true history and our role in the present day society, because my high school teachers didn't teach me shit. Just white man bullshit. We believe in an educational system that will give to our people a knowledge of self. If a man does not have knowledge of himself and his position in society and the world, then he has little chance to relate to anything else. We want all black men to be exempt from military service. We believe that black people should not be forced to fight in the military service to defend a racist government that does not protect us. We will not fight and kill other people of color in the world who, like black people, are being victimized by the white racist government of America. We will protect ourselves from the force and violence of the racist police and the racist military by whatever means necessary. We want an immediate end to police brutality and murder of black people. We believe we can end police brutality in our black community by organizing black self-defense groups that are dedicated to defending our black community from racist police oppression and brutality. The Second Amendment to the Constitution of the United States gives a right to bear arms. We therefore believe that all black people should arm themselves for self-defense. Pixel Diary says this. Shout out to this, and shout out to Pixel Diary up in the chat. Thanks for joining. Continuing here. All right. Where we going here? We want freedom for all black people held in federal, state, county, and city prisons and jails. We believe that all black people should be released from the many jails and prisons because they have not received a fair and impartial trial. So radical, so real. So real and so raw. So raw. I love it. I love it. I love it. We want all black people, when brought to trial, to be tried in court by a jury of their peer group or people from their black communities, as defined by the Constitution of the United States. We believe that the courts should follow the United States Constitution so that black people will receive fair trials. The 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution gives a man a right to be tried by his peer group. A peer is a person from a similar economic, social, religious, geographical, environmental, historical, and racial background. To do this, the court will be forced to select a jury from the black community from which the black defendant came. We have been and are being tried by all white juries that have no understanding of the average reasoning man of the black community. We want land, bread, housing, education, clothing, justice, and peace. And as our major political objective, a United Nations supervised plebiscite to be held throughout the black colony in which only black colonial subjects will be allowed to participate for the purpose of determining the will of black people as to their national destiny. When, in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Not among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute a new government, laying its foundation on such principles, and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence, indeed, will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. And accordingly, all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer, while evils are insufferable, than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism. It is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Basically, what he's arguing for, and this is taken from, I believe, the Declaration of Independence, written by a racist slave owner, Thomas Jefferson, right? But I think what he's trying to say here, Bobby and Huey, is like, listen, we want land back. They want land back. We want black people to have a plebiscite and they vote, and we essentially get our land back, right? Black nationhood, all right? So, with the program on paper, we set up the structure of our organization. Bobby became chairman, and I chose the position of Minister of Defense. I was very happy with this arrangement. I do not like to lead formally, and the chairman has to conduct meetings and be involved in administration. We also discussed having an advisory cabinet as an information arm of the party. We wanted this cabinet to do research on each of the 10 points and their relation to the community, and to advise the people on how to implement them. It seemed best to weigh the political wing. It seemed best to weight the political wing of the party with street brothers and the advisory cabinet with middle-class blacks who had the necessary knowledge and skills. We were also seeking a functional unity between middle-class blacks and the street brothers. I asked my brother Melvin to approach a few friends about serving on the advisory cabinet, but when our plan became clear, they all refused and the cabinet was deferred. The first member of the Black Panther Party, after Bobby and myself, was Little Bobby Hutton. Little Bobby had met Bobby Seale at the North Oakland Service Center, where both were working, and he immediately became enthusiastic about the nascent organization. Even though he was only about 15 years old then, he was a responsible and mature person, determined to help the cause of black people. He became the party's first treasurer. Little Bobby was the youngest of 7 children. His family had come to Oakland from Arkansas when he was 3 years old. His parents were good, hardworking people, but Bobby had endured the same hardships and humiliations to which so many young blacks in poor communities are subjected. Like many of the brothers, he had been kicked out of school. Then he had gotten a part-time job at the service center. After work, he used to come around to Bobby Seale's house to talk and learn to read. At the time of his murder, he was reading Black Reconstruction in America by W.E.B. Du Bois. My God, bruh. I am so behind on my reading, bruh, for real. So behind. Because Lil Bobby Hutton is 17, 16, whatever, however old he was when he got killed. And he was reading Black Reconstruction in America by W.E.B. Du Bois. And here I am struggling with Huey P's revolutionary suicide. Sad. I'm always humbled every day. All right, I'm always trying every day to get better. Anyway, shout out to KL9649 up in the chat. Shout out to KL joining the conversation. We're gonna continue reading Huey P. Newton's text, Revolutionary Suicide, right here. So, Lil Bobby was a serious revolutionary, but there was nothing grim about him. He had an infectious smile and a disarming quality that made people love him. He died courageously, the first Black Panther to make the supreme sacrifice for the people. We will attempt to carry on the work he began. We started now to implement our 10-point program. Interested primarily in educating and revolutionizing the community, we needed to get their attention and give them something to identify with. This is why the 7th point, police action, was the first program we emphasized. Point 7 stated, we want an immediate end to police brutality and murder of black people. This is a major issue in every black community. The police have never been our protectors. Instead, they act as the military arm of our oppressors and continually brutalize us. Many communities have tried and failed to get civilian review boards to supervise the behavior of the police. In some places, organized citizen patrols have followed the police and observed them in their community dealings. They take pictures and make tape recordings of their encounters and report misbehavior to the authorities. However, the authorities responsible for overseeing the police are policemen themselves and usually side against the citizens. We recognize that it was ridiculous to report the police to the police, but we hoped that by raising encounters to a higher level, by patrolling the police with arms, we would see a change in their behavior. Further, the community would notice this and become interested in the party. Thus, our armed patrols were also a means of recruiting. At first, the patrols were a total success. Frightened and confused, the police did not know how to respond because they had never encountered patrols like this before. They were familiar with the community alert patrols in other cities, but never before had guns been an integral part of any patrol program. With weapons in our hands, we were no longer their subjects, but their equals. Out on patrol, we stopped whenever we saw the police questioning a brother or a sister. We would walk over with our weapons and observe them from a safe distance so that the police could not say we were interfering with the performance of their duty. We would ask the community members if they were being abused. Most of the time, when a policeman saw us coming, he slipped his book back into his pocket, got into his car, and left in a hurry. The citizens who had been stopped were as amazed as the police at our sudden appearance. Here come the men in black. Sick, just ill. I love that. I love that. Let's see how long this chapter is real quick. Hold on, wait, let me make sure. We might be here for a while with chapter. Okay. All right, chapter 17 is quite a few pages, but it's not that long. And plus, we were reading a history of psychology, and that was a beast. So this is nothing. This is nothing. All right. So the citizens who had been stopped were amazed as the police at our sudden appearance. So when the Black Panthers showed up, the police were running when they first came out on the scene. So Huey says, I always carried law books in my car. Sometimes when a policeman was harassing a citizen, I would stand off a little and read the relevant portions of the penal code in a loud voice to all within hearing distance. In doing this, we were helping to educate those who gathered to observe these incidents. If the policeman arrested the citizen and took him to the station, we would follow and immediately post bail. Many community people could not believe at first that we had only their interest at heart. Nobody had ever given them any support or assistance when the police harassed them. But here we were, proud Black men armed with guns and a knowledge of the law. Many citizens came right out of jail and into the party, and the statistics of murder and brutality by policemen in our communities fell sharply. Each day, we went out on our watch. Sometimes we got on a policeman's tail and followed him with our weapons in full view. If he darted around the block or made a U-turn trying to follow us, we let him do it until he got tired of that. Then we would follow him again. Damn, they're spinning the block on the police. That's gangster. That's gangster. We would follow him again if he started spinning the block. Either way, we took up a good bit of police time that otherwise would have been spent in harassment. As our forces built up, we doubled the patrols, then tripled them. We began to patrol everywhere: Oakland, Richmond, Berkeley, and San Francisco. Most patrols were part of our normal movement around the community. We kept them random, however, so that the police could not set a network to anticipate us. They never knew when or where we were going to show up. It might be late at night or early in the morning. Some brothers would go on patrol the same time every day, but never in a specific pattern or in the same geographical area. The chief purpose of the patrols was to teach the community security against the police, and we did not need a regular schedule for that. We knew that no particular area could be totally defended. Only the community could effectively defend and eventually liberate itself. Our aim was simply to teach them how to go about it. We passed out our literature and 10-point program to the citizens who gathered, discussed community defense, and educated them about their rights concerning weapons. All along, the number of members grew. This is hard for other people from other countries to realize this, but Americans just love guns. Black folks, Latin folks, Asian folks, whatever we call white folks. We love guns. And so whenever people just see people with guns, they're like, oh, look at that. Oh, look at them. So yeah, that's what was happening. It was effective propaganda. This is propaganda of the deed. Propaganda of the deed at its finest. At its finest. Anyway, The Black Panthers were and always, the Black Panthers were and are always required to keep their activities within legal bounds. This was emphasized repeatedly in our political education classes and also when we taught weapons care. If we overstepped legal bounds, the police would easily gain the upper hand and be able to continue their intimidation. We also knew the community was somewhat fearful of the gun and of the policeman who had it. So we studied the law about weapons and kept within our rights. To be arrested for having weapons would be a setback to our program of teaching the people their constitutional right to bear arms. As long as we kept everything legal, the police could do nothing, and the people would see that armed defense was a legitimate constitutional right. In this way, they would lose their doubts and fears and be able to move against the oppressor. It was not all observation and penal code reading on those patrols. The police invariably, shocked to meet a cadre of disciplined and armed black men coming to the support of the community, reacted in strange and unpredictable ways. In their fright, some of them became children, cursing and insulting us. We responded in kind, calling them swine and pigs, but never cursing. This could be cause for arrest, and we took care not to be arrested with our weapons. But we demonstrated their cowardice to the community with our shakabuku. It was sometimes hilarious to see their reaction. They had always been cocky and sure of themselves as long as they had weapons to intimidate the unarmed community. When we equalized the situation, their real cowardice was exposed. What is shakabuku? Is that when you cock back the shotgun? Is that what it is? I'm gonna click 7, see if anything pops up. Okay, I don't know what the shakabuku is. If I find it out, I'll let you know. Anyway, so soon the police began to retaliate. We expected this. They had to get back at us in some way and were prepared. The fact that we had conquered our fear of death made it possible to face them under any circumstances. The police began to keep a record of Black Panther vehicles. Whenever they spotted one, it would be stopped and investigated for possible violations. This was a childish ploy, but it was the police way. We always made sure our vehicles were clean, without violations, and the police were usually hard-pressed to find any justification for stopping us. Since we were within the law, they soon resorted to illegal tactics. I was stopped and questioned 40 or 50 times by police without being arrested or even getting a ticket in most instances. The few times I did end up on the blotter, it merely proved how far they were willing to go. A policeman once stopped me and examined my license and the car for any violation of the motor vehicle code. He spent about an hour or half an hour going over the vehicle, checking lights, horn, tires, everything. Finally, he shook the rear license plate and a bolt dropped off, so he wrote out a ticket for a faulty license plate. Dickhead. Some encounters with the police were more dramatic. At times, they drew their guns and we drew ours, until we reached a sort of standoff. This happened frequently to me. I often felt that some days, one of the police would go crazy and pull the trigger. Some of them were so nervous that they looked as if they might shake a bullet out of their pistols. I would rather have a brave man pull a gun on me since he is less likely to panic, but we were prepared for anything. Sometimes they threatened to shoot, thinking I would lose courage, but I remembered the lessons of solitary confinement and assigned every silly action its proper significance. They were afraid of us. It was as simple as that. Each day we went forth fully aware that we might not come home or see each other ever again. There is no closeness to equal that. In front of our first Black Panther office on 58th Street in Oakland, a policeman once drew his gun and pointed it at me while I sat in my car. When people gathered to observe, the police told them to clear the area. I ignored the gun, got out of the car, and asked the people to go into the party office. They had a right to observe the police. Then I called the policeman an ignorant Georgia cracker. Woo! To his face. To his face. Let's repeat. Huey said, I called that policeman an ignorant Georgia cracker. who had come west to get away from sharecropping. After that, I walked around the car and spoke to the citizens about the police and about every man's right to be armed. I took a chance there, but I figured the policeman would not shoot me with all those eyes on him. He was willing to shoot me without cause, I am sure, but not before so many witnesses. Another policeman admitted as much during an incident in Richmond. I had stopped to watch a motorcycle cop question a citizen. He was clearly edgy at my presence, but I stood off quietly at a reasonable distance with my shotgun in hand. After writing up the citizen, he rode his motorcycle over to me and asked if I wanted to press charges for police brutality. About a dozen people were standing around watching us. Are you paranoid? I replied. Do you think you're important? Do you think I would waste my time going down to the police station to make a report on you? No, you're just a coward anyway. With that, I got into my car. When he tried to hold my door open, I slammed it shut and told him to get his hands off. By now, people were laughing at the cop, and rather than suffer further humiliation, he drove off, steaming mad. About halfway down the street, he turned around and came back. He wanted to do something, and he was about 50 shades of red. Pulling up beside me, he stuck his head close and said, "If it was night, you wouldn't do this." "You're right," I replied. "I sure wouldn't. But you're threatening me now, aren't you?" He got a little redder and kicked his machine into gear and took off. Yeah, fuck the police. Fuck all the police. There is no such thing as a good police officer. Fuck police. All cops are bastards. They are the devil. They are the arm of the state that is meant to oppress us and brutalize people. Fuck the police. All police can go to hell. Continuing here. The police wanted me badly, but they needed to do their dirty work out of view of the community. When a citizen was unarmed, they brutalized him anytime, almost casually. But when he was prepared to defend himself, the police became little more than criminals, working at night. On another occasion, I stopped by the Black Panther office after paying some bills for my father. Since I was taking care of family business, I had not carried my shotgun with me. It was at home, but I did have a dagger, fully sheathed, in my belt. In the office were two comrades, Warren Tucker, a captain in the party, and another member. As we talked, an 11-year-old boy burst into the office and said, "The police are at my friend's house, and they're tearing up the place." This house was only about 3 blocks away. So the two Black Panthers and I hurried to the scene. Warren Tucker had a .45 pistol to his hip in full view, but the other two of us had no weapons. We never kept weapons in the office, since we were there only periodically. When we arrived, we found 3 policemen in the house, turning over couches and chairs, searching and pushing a little boy around and shouting, "Where's the shotgun?" The boy kept saying, "I don't have a shotgun," but the police went right on looking. I asked the policeman who seemed to be in charge if he had a search warrant, and he answered that he did not need one because he was in hot pursuit. Then he told me to leave the house. The little boy asked me to stay, so I continued to question the police, telling them they had no right to be there. The policeman finally turned on me. "You're going to get out of here," he said. "No," I said. "You leave if you don't want a search warrant." In the middle of this argument, the boy's father arrived and also asked the police for a search warrant. When the police admitted they did not have one, he ordered them out. As they started to leave, one of the policemen stopped in the doorway and said to the father, "Why are you telling us to get out? Why don't you get rid of these Panthers? They're the troublemakers." The father replied, "Before this, I didn't like the Panthers. I had heard bad things about them. But in the last few minutes, I've changed my mind because they helped my son when you pushed him around." The police became even more outraged at this. All their hostility now turned toward us. As the whole group went down the steps and out into the yard, more policemen arrived on the scene. The house was directly across the street from Oakland City College, and the dozens or so police cars had attracted a crowd that was milling about. The policeman who had been ordered out of the house took new courage at the sight of reinforcements. Walking over to me in the yard, he came close, saying, "You are always making trouble for us." Coming closer still, he growled at me in a low voice that could not be overheard. "You motherfucker." This was a regular police routine, a transparent strategy. He wanted me to curse him before witnesses, then he could arrest me. But I had learned to be cautious. After he called me a motherfucker, he stood waiting for the explosion, but it did not come in the way he expected. Back then, I guess being called motherfucker was a new word, like it was hot on the block. So, it's like somebody calling you a fuckboy today, I guess. Anyway. But I had learned to be cautious. After he called me a motherfucker, he stood waiting for the explosion, but it did not come in the way he expected. Instead, I called him a swine, a pig, a slimy snake, everything I could think of without using profanity. All cops are pigs. All cops are dirty hogs. They are dirty, fat, nasty hogs. Nasty, nasty hogs. Fuck the police. Anyway, by now he was almost apoplectic. You're talking to me you're talking to me like that, and you have a weapon. You're displaying a weapon in a rude and threatening fashion. Then he turned to Warren Tucker. Warren's gun was still in his holster, and said, "And so are you," as if on signal. The 15 policemen who had been standing around uncertainly stormed the three of us and threw on handcuffs. They did not say they were placing us under arrest. If they had, we would have gladly taken the arrest under the circumstances without any resistance. From the way we went hurtling off in the paddy wagon with its siren wailing and the police cars ahead and behind, you might have thought they had bagged a mafia capo. After we were booked, they searched us and found a penknife in Warren Tucker's pocket, the kind Boy Scouts use. So they dropped the charge of displaying a weapon in a rude and threatening manner and charged him simply with carrying a concealed weapon. Even that charge was eventually dropped. This was the kind of harassment we went through over and over again, simply because we chose to exercise our constitutional rights to self-defense and stand up for the community. In spite of the fact that we followed the law to the letter, we were arrested and convicted of all sorts of minor trumped-up charges. They sought to frighten us and turn the community against us, but what they did had the opposite effect. For instance, after this encounter, we gained a number of new members from City College students who had watched the incident and had seen how things really were. They had been skeptical about us earlier because of the bad treatment we had received in the press, but seeing is believing. All right, one more page and a half. So the police who started this particular incident testified against me in 1968 in my trial for killing a policeman. When my attorney, Charles Gary, questioned him under cross-examination, he admitted his fear of the Black Panthers. He is 6 foot tall and weighs 250 pounds. I am 5 feet 10 and a half inches and weigh 150 pounds. Okay, all right. Okay, Huey, it's okay. You're a manlet, my guy. You're a manlet or you're a normal man. You don't have to put the half inch on. Nigga, who does that? Who puts a half inch on? Huey says, I am 5 feet 10 inches, 10 and a half inches. One more time. Huey says, I am 5 feet 10 and a half inches and weigh 150 pounds. Yet he said that I surrounded him. Straying further from the facts, he testified that he had not said anything to me, that on the contrary, he was too frightened to open his mouth. The Black Panthers allegedly frightened him by shaking high-powered rifles in his face, calling him a pig, and threatening to kill him. He was fearful, he said, that I would kill him with the dagger, though it was sheathed. He stated that I had come right up to him, that I was in his face, and, as he put it, he was still around me. So much for police testimony. In addition to our patrols and confrontations with the police, I did a lot of recruiting in pool halls and bars, sometimes working 12 to 16 hours a day. I passed out leaflets with our 10-point program, explaining each point to all who would listen. Going deep into the community like this, I invariably became involved in whatever was happening. This day-to-day contact became an important part of our organizing effort. There is a bar restaurant in North Oakland known as Boston's Locker. I used to call it my office because I would sometimes sit there for 20 hours straight talking with the people who came in. Most of the time, I had my shotgun with me, if the owners of the establishment did not object. If they did, I left it in my car. At other times, I would go to City College or to the Oakland Skills Center. Anywhere people gathered. It was hard work, but not in the sense of working at an ordinary job with its deadly routine and sense of futility and performing empty labor. It was work that had profound significance for me. The very meaning of my life was in it, and it brought me closer to the people. This recruiting had an interesting ramification in that I tried to transform many of the so-called criminal activities going on in the street into something political, although this had to be done gradually. Instead of trying to eliminate these activities, numbers, hot goods, drugs, I attempted to channel them into significant community actions. Black consciousness had generally reached a point where a man felt guilty about exploiting the black community. However, if his daily activities for survival could be integrated with actions that undermined the established order, he felt good about it. It gave him a feeling of justification and strengthened his own sense of personal worth. Many of the brothers who were burglarizing and participating in similar pursuits began to contribute weapons and material to community defense. In order to survive, they still had to sell their hot goods, but at the same time, they would pass some of the cash on to us. That way, ripping off became more than just an individual thing. Gradually, the Black Panthers came to be accepted in the Bay Area community. We have provided a needed example of strength and dignity by showing people how to defend themselves. More important, we lived among them. They could see every day that with us, the people came first. All right, and that's the end of chapter 17. We're going to pick up with chapter 18 tomorrow for revolutionary suicide, and we will complete all of part 3 of this phenomenal book when we read the chapters Eldridge Cleaver, Denzel Cowell, Sacramento and the Panther Bill, and Growing Pains, which is quite a lot of reading, but it's only about 40 pages or so, maybe less than 40 pages, 37. So it's not that hard to do. We'll read those next 4 chapters tomorrow. Hopefully you found this engaging, enlightening, fun. What I'm picking up here is that, we have to do the reading. And there's a lot of reading that I have to do in my life, you know what I'm saying? But we have to actually get out there with the people. And we can't be afraid to go to the most gutterest places. You cannot be scared to get in the mud if you want to recruit the real revolutionaries, because the people that have the least to gain from this society continuing are the ones who are the most revolutionary at their core, even if they're reactionary in their speech, in their habits, right? At their core, the poor, the dispossessed, the drug dealers, the prostitutes, the people who are homeless out in the streets, the people who are working poor and about to get evicted tomorrow, you know what I'm saying? Those are the real radical revolutionaries, you know what I'm saying? Because they are suffering the most under this capitalistic, exploitative, racist, sexist, misogynistic, patriarchal, homophobic, transphobic, Islamophobic, wicked system that we are currently living under in modern neoliberal capitalism. Hopefully you enjoyed this. We're going to wrap it up right here. Catch you tomorrow, and peace.